Well, welcome back. For this week, we have added a second part to this module dealing with cyber security. And so it's one thing to be able to program. It's another thing that you want to be using the, the best practices, the industry practices to ensure that things are done according to plan and there isn't any nefarious things that are overriding and that could cause tremendous damage or whatever. And so one of the government organizations that deals with this is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, as part of the U.S. Department of Commerce. And so this is a presentation that they provide. And so there'll be some resources that'll be made available as part of the course that you'll see this. And so this is a discussion on cybersecurity framework. And at the time of when this was recorded, the version that was out there was version 1.1. So there has been a history in the cybersecurity framework. There clearly was seen through executive orders that there was a need for improving critical infrastructure cybersecurity. And so these are the kind of outcomes that are laid out there. So there's three components of the cybersecurity framework: the core, the profiles, and the implementation tiers. The core is the desired cybersecurity outcomes organized in a hierarchy and aligned to more detailed guidelines and controls. For the profiles, it alignment of an organization's requirements and objectives, risk appetite, and resources using the desired outcomes of the framework core. So we've talked previously, if you had a really expensive tooling operation, that the parts would be a huge financial loss to the corporation if things didn't go right. Or if they were tooled incorrectly, maybe in a very important part when it's actually in operation could fail, and that would be something we don't want to have happen. So for implementation tiers, this is a qualitative measures of organizations' cybersecurity risk management practices. And so these are the kind of things that the company that you're working for, or you're actually doing this implementation for the folks in this course who are engineers, that you could be the one that would be involved with that. So what are the key framework attributes? The principles of current and future versions of the framework. There's a common acceptable language, accessible language, adaptability to many technologies, life cycle phases, sectors, and uses. We've seen that a little bit when we talk about the history of various types of machining tools and how they've gotten complicated with more and more details of the programming. Risk-based, and so you want to be thinking about identifying risk and then mitigating against those. It's based on international standards. It's a living document, and it's guided by many perspectives: private sector, academia, and public sector. And so these are the three elements that would be part of trying to figure this out. So there's an identify, protect, the identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. All of these are things that has to be dealt with. To describe the desired outcomes is what would be where the identify deals with. For the protect, it needs to be understandable by everyone. It needs to apply to any type of risk management. It defines the entire breadth of cybersecurity, and it spans both prevention and reaction. So we have the functions, and all of those need to be within the framework. There are some details that get into each one of these 5 categories. And so this is just an example of this type of spreadsheet that gets into this. And so this one's just trying to be focusing on the protect. And so there's categories for each one of these functions. And then there's various types of subcategories, part of those categories. And so this goes on and on with a lot of best practices from these different players from the private sector, academia, and public sector that are put this together into this the connected path of the framework outcomes. So for the implementation tiers, here we can be thinking about if partial risk information, repeatable and adaptive. And so this is just some of the specifics that's also included into this type of development that's part of this. So there needs to be a risk management process And so need to be thinking about the integrated risk, the management program, and the external participation that would be part of that. So we're thinking about applicability for all systems life cycle phases. The enhanced guideline for managing cybersecurity within supply chains and for buying decisions, for new guidance for self-assessment, a better accountability for authorization, authentication, and identity proofing. There may be certain types of certifications that the company that you work for or the assembly line or manufacturing line has. And so this is where some of this could start to come into bear. It can incorporate emerging vulnerability information. And so there's a coordinated vulnerability disclosure to say that, well, we need to look at things to fix any holes, to update software, to make sure that any internal to external access are monitored and carefully evaluated for issues, and it administratively updates the information references. So there is international use, and so the US is among many other countries that are looking at how to be benefiting from this kind of involvement here. So for manufacturing profiles, this is something would be the area that would be most appropriate for what we're thinking about here. And if you pull down the copy of the lecture notes, there is a link here that you can actually put this up for thinking in terms of the manufacturing profile. There are success stories, and here are just a couple that you can actually find from the NIST website and read over those. I'm not going to go over those, but those are some things that are out there. And just to be finishing up, here is just a couple of different types of resources if you want to be going to NIST and finding out a little bit more. So thank you very much. That was just a little bit of a primer for thinking about the cybersecurity, thinking of the framework that you may be involved in implementing or verifying that you comply with in your future jobs in your engineering careers. Thank you.